Hello and welcome to SQL for Absolute Beginners course. In this lesson, we'll start with why should we learn SQL. Now, before we even jump into learning actual SQL, let me introduce you to myself. I'm your host and course instructor RJ. I have IT experience of almost 20 plus years now. I have done coding, programming to IT management. I have done programming in C, VBA, and actually my focus has been always to use and develop things in database, and I have used Oracle, SQL Server, Teradata, DB2, Netezza, all these different databases. Now I know this is an absolute beginner's course, so all these seem to be foreign sometimes, but trust me, it will make it all easier once we go forward. But these are just the names of some of the database systems. Think it like, when we have a car, basically cars are having different brand names. So it could be Toyota, it could be BMW, it could be Mercedes. Similar thing, our database management system is a car, and these are just different brand names. But ultimately, car is the one, it's a vehicle which will take us from one point to another, and that's how we'll be looking at our SQL also. Now, on top of these database systems, I am also doing lots of data analytics now, which is the current the call of the day basically. Now, on top of that, I have done consulting or worked as a full-time employee also at some of all these Fortune 500 companies, including GE, Merck, which is a pharmaceutical, Citibank, that is Bank of America, Time Magazine, Godiva Chocolate Factory, NBC, UBS, which are financial institutions. NBC is a media company, TV, etc. So basically, I have varied experience in all different kind of industries, but everywhere it was just the application of database. So I basically, all I'm trying to say is that I bring lots of experience with me in the database field, and that's why I'm sharing my knowledge and expertise that I think will be helpful to all of you. Now, just a quick note on what excites me. Well, I always like to learn new technology even after these many years of experience. I sometimes feel that I know very little about things, and I constantly on the verge of learning new things and finding new tutorials, and I also subscribe to lots of such lessons basically. And of course, I do like to help others and share knowledge, because especially the IT industry is so much fast changing industry that you have to be constantly sharing knowledge, understanding new things, and helping each other out. All right, so before we actually start about database, let's understand the data itself. Now, as we nowadays say, data is everywhere. Whether you pick up your phone, as soon as you call somebody, well, that is a data you use. There is a phone number, that itself is a data. You are driving car, you can see on the dashboard there is a speed, there is how many miles you have driven the car. There is all kinds of data you can find. Your phone has lots of apps that has lots of data. So anywhere you go, there are always different kinds of data you will encounter. Now, what are these different forms of data that we can see? So there are either numeric data, there could be text data, text format, and there are images also now considered data. Basically, these are audio and video. Images include some form of audio, or sorry, a video as a still, but then if you add audio, then it becomes video. So all these are the types of data that we encounter and we see everywhere. But the question is, what and who uses this data? Well, of course, there are lots of places you will find the application, including educational institutes like universities and schools. Pharmaceutical companies, they need to do research on which drug is effective. Of course, in general, all the business communities, business functions will require data like finance, marketing, advertising, HR, sales, inventory. All of that requires some form of data that we just talked about. And nowadays, even general social media sites like Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, all of these social media sites also use the data. So if they use or they need data, what do they do with this data? Well, the data is required to be either to be stored, or they analyze it, or they would be presented, meaning data needs to be either of these forms of operation needs to be done on those that acquired data. Now, there at a high level, if you go back to our first slide, which said what type of data are there, where we saw that is text and images and audio and video. Well, they are basically called unstructured data, but there is a separate type of data which would mostly follow some structure or hierarchy, and they will follow some kind of relational model. So the best example for these would be, think about a bank transaction. So when you deposit money or you withdraw some money, you write a check, all of that transactions are linked to certain way to your name, your account, your social security number, and then it can be traced back, and there is a hierarchy and aggregation and certain functions that will be applied on that. And after that, you will be able to either store data, analyze data, present data, as we talked about. So this is very structured form of data. That's what I'm trying to emphasize. There is also another type, which is sales transaction. So if you go to a store and you bought something, well, look at the receipt you received. In the receipt, you will find there is date, there is item detail, there is some code for item which is called SKU. There will be price, obviously. There will be quantity, how many items you bought. There will be total, there will be tax amount. So all of these are individual data points, and that also can be considered as data. And lots of companies report and review the sales transactions data, like how much are we selling, how much did we increase, did we decrease from last year, from last certain time frame. So they compare also their performance, things like that. And another simple example is your driving license. It contains lots of data, the license number, your name, your date of birth. There could be additional things like address, expiration date, all kinds of things. So the point is, these are all structured data, and we will be focusing on this structured data, which will be structured in such a way that we can establish certain relations, and our focus will be called RDBMS, or relational database. We will not be considering any unstructured data. That's what I'm just trying to clarify. So in the next lesson, we'll go and start looking actual SQL basics. But even there, as I said, this is SQL for beginners, absolute beginners. So I do not expect anybody to know anything about SQL, and if you do know, that's perfectly fine. But my point is, SQL and this data is so much available now that there is a higher and higher need for people who know this data, and there are lots of different career roles available now. Those who know about data and how to manage data, how to handle this data. So there is a lot of career opportunities, and hence this course will be emphasizing, if somebody doesn't have any background, can still get into learning database and then getting some kind of a career shift maybe, or enhancement, either way. So that's my take on this course. I will continue in the next lesson. Until then, enjoy SQL.